A young man returns to his village in Lumajang, East Java, after being away for just 7 days. But when he arrives, his home looks abandoned, as if it's been empty for years. Neighbors avoid him with pale faces, children run inside without a word, and one terrified teen whispers, "I've seen his face on a gravestone." His name is Rifki. He still breathes, still feels the wind on his skin, still believes he's alive. But a funeral notice pinned to the village board says otherwise. He died 7 years ago. How can someone who walks, speaks, and longs to go home be treated like a ghost that shouldn't exist? This isn't a typical ghost story. It's a descent into the blurred line between memory and reality, the living and the dead. Once you step into Rifki's world, you may never look at your own reflection the same way again. Late afternoon in Dusun Tumfursari, Lumajang. The sky glows orange after harvest season, the air crisp with the scent of dry soil. Dust floats over the narrow dirt roads where barefoot children play tag and roosters crow in the distance. In a modest wooden house facing the lane, Rifki drops his backpack by the door. His mother, Bu Marni, is packing rice meals she had prepared at dawn. "I'm leaving now, Mom. I'll call you once I reach Joyaboyo Terminal," he says, pressing her hand respectfully. Her grip lingers longer than usual. Her eyes seem to search his face, memorizing it. "Be careful. Don't take too long. I'll be alone here." She smiles softly. "Don't worry. It's just 1 week. If the project works out, I'll only be traveling back and forth, not moving away." He walks off. She stays on the porch, watching his figure disappear into the bend of the dusty lane, her heart uneasy, though she says nothing. The first few days go as expected. Rifki sends texts. He's arrived safely, checked the site, busy with meetings. His voice over the phone is calm, steady. But by the 4th day, the updates stop. No messages. His number can't be reached. On the 5th day, anxiety starts gnawing at Bu Marni. By the 6th, it's unbearable. She visits the neighborhood headman, asking if anyone from Surabaya had sent news. He shrugs. "Your son's probably just busy. Field work makes people hard to contact." Neighbors offer platitudes, but they can't soothe a mother's restless heart. At night, she stares at the door, waiting for footsteps that never come. Day 7. Just after the afternoon prayer, a lone figure walks down the village road. His steps are slow, his face pale, his clothes dusty. A small backpack hangs on his shoulder. It's Rifki. He greets people he recognizes. No one replies. Instead, they turn away, their eyes cold, uneasy. Rifki reaches his house. The wooden gate he once painted now rots, the hinges rusted. Wild vines crawl up the walls, moss covers the roof, and the porch ceiling hangs broken. It looks as if no one has lived there for years. His chest tightens. He knocks twice on the door. Thump, thump. Footsteps inside. The door creaks open halfway. A middle-aged man peers out, frowning. "Yes? Who are you looking for?" He hesitates. "This is Bu Marni's house, right? I'm her son." The man squints, confused. "Bu Marni? Sorry, this house has been empty for 2 years, since I rented it. Before that, it had been empty even longer. Never heard of her." Rifki stumbles back. His pulse pounds. "No, this is my house. I lived here with my mother." But the man just shakes his head and closes the door. He spins around. Children across the street scatter inside. A passing woman grips her child's hand tighter, her face pale as she avoids looking at him. His throat dries up. Something is terribly wrong. Desperate, he rushes to the home of Pacnario, his old neighbor. He sits outside, drying tobacco leaves under the fading sun. "Pacnario," he calls with relief. The old man looks up. His eyes widen in horror. His whole body trembles. "God have mercy," he whispers. "It's me, Rifki. I just came back from Surabaya. Where's my mother? Why does the house look like that?" Pacnario doesn't answer. He stumbles backward into his house, slamming the door shut. Rifki stands frozen on the street, his chest tight. He turns towards the small coffee stall by the village prayer house. A few teenagers are hanging out there, sipping tea and smoking clothes cigarettes. As soon as Rifki steps closer, they rise quickly, abandoning their glasses half full. One of them whispers, just loud enough to cut through the air, "I swear I saw his face on a gravestone." The words chill him to the bone. Rifki stumbles forward, trying to catch them, but they scatter like frightened birds. His breath quickens. Alone in the narrow drip road, he wipes the sweat dripping down his temple. Though the evening air is cool, his body shakes with a cold that doesn't feel natural. He walks back to his house. No, the house that no longer feels like his. Sitting on the cracked steps, he stares at the sky as the sunset fades. His mind races with questions. The village looks the same, yet nothing is the same. The world around him seems to reject his presence. The night creeps in, and Rifki begins to wonder if he has returned home or stepped into someplace far darker. The last glow of daylight slipped behind the hills, leaving the village in a strange half-light. Crickets screeched in the brush, and dogs barked faintly in the distance. Rifki stood up from the broken steps of his old home, forcing his legs to carry him toward the narrow lane leading to the prayer house. Only it wasn't there anymore. Where the small wooden masala once stood, a modest building where his mother attended weekly Quran recitations, now rose a gleaming mosque. Its dome reflected the last fragments of daylight, freshly painted walls glowing with a sterile white. The sign over the gate read, "Masjid al-Mu'minin." Rifki froze, staring at the iron fence that hadn't existed before. His mind screamed. He'd only been gone for 1 week, yet this new mosque looked as though it had been standing for years. A group of young men exited the building, chatting softly. When they noticed Rifki by the fence, their conversation died. Not one of them returned his tentative smile. Some lowered their heads, others crossed the street entirely, refusing to walk past him. His throat felt dry. He forced himself to keep moving, wandering deeper into the village lanes. The houses he once knew by heart stood oddly unfamiliar. Some were replaced by empty lots, weeds crawling where children once played. One house was nothing but scorched remains, the charred frame of a roof sagging inward. He turned toward a small lane leading to Pak Darto's home. That man had been a close friend of Rifki's late father, often spending long evenings playing chess together. If anyone would still recognize him, surely it would be Pak Darto. The house still stood, though the paint had long since peeled and the front door sagged from its hinges. Heart pounding, Rifki knocked gently. "Pak Darto, it's me, Rifki." Shuffling footsteps approached. The door creaked open, revealing an old man leaning heavily on a wooden cane. His shirt was wrinkled, his face drawn, eyes dim with age. At first he squinted in confusion, but as soon as Rifki stepped into the light, his entire body stiffened. His cane shook in his grip. "In the name of God," Pak Darto whispered, his lips trembling.
He began reciting prayers under his breath, his voice cracked with terror. Rifki's heart dropped. "No, Pa, it's me. I'm alive. I just came back from Surabaya. Please, where's my mother?" But the old man staggered backward, his legs giving way. His body collapsed onto the floorboards, his eyes rolling back. Rifki panicked, dropping to his knees. He shook the man's shoulders, but his skin felt icy cold. "Pak Darto! Wake up, please!" Voices erupted outside. Neighbors rushed over, drawn by the commotion. They stopped dead in their tracks when they saw Rifki hunched over the collapsed elder. "Don't touch him," one man shouted, pulling others back. Another hissed, eyes wide with fear. "That's Rifki. Rifki, who's been dead for years." The words sliced through Rifki's chest like a knife. He stumbled back, his hands shaking. "No," he whispered, eyes wet. "I'm right here. I never died. But his voice trailed off. Because across the lane, pinned to the wooden village notice board, was a sheet of paper bordered in black. Rifki staggered toward it, the crowd of villagers shrinking away as he passed. His eyes scanned the bold letters at the top. 7th Memorial Service, Hall, Rifki Maulana. Born August 8th, 1994. Died June 2nd, 2016. His breath hitched. The letters blurred as his vision swam. His hands trembled violently as they traced his own name. The date of death matched exactly 7 years earlier, down to the very month and day. "No," he whispered, "this can't be real. I was in Surabaya. I was working. I only left a week ago." But the notice didn't lie. His name, his birth date, his supposed death. Behind him, whispers rose. "See, it's his ghost. He shouldn't be here. Why has he come back?" Fear crawled under Rifki's skin. He broke into a run, shoving past the murmuring crowd, fleeing through the narrow lanes of the village. His chest heaved as he followed the dirt path toward the edge of the village, his feet carrying him almost unconsciously. The sun had set fully now, and the night pressed close, heavy with the scent of damp earth and the hum of unseen insects. He remembered what one frightened neighbor had mentioned. His mother no longer lived in their old house. She had moved to a small rental on the outskirts, in Tucson, Cartasono. It was less than a mile away. Clutching onto the hope that at least his mother would recognize him, Rifki forced his legs to keep moving. His breath rasped, his body cold despite the humid air. The further he walked, the denser the fog grew, creeping low over the fields, blurring the path. Finally, he spotted a dim light ahead, a small wooden house with faded walls. A pair of worn sandals rested on the front porch. His heart pounded wildly. He hesitated only a moment before knocking softly. "Boo," his voice cracked. From inside, he heard the sound of a chair scraping against the floor. Slowly, the door creaked open. A frail woman stood there, her figure cloaked in a worn headscarf. Her face was thinner, cheeks hollow, eyes sunken with exhaustion. Strands of white hair slipped from beneath her veil, but it was unmistakable. "Boo," Rifki whispered. "It's me, Rifki." For a moment, her expression was frozen. Then her lips trembled, her eyes widening in terror. She staggered back, shaking her head. "No," her voice was barely a whisper. "You're not my son. My Rifki died. He drowned 7 years ago. We buried him with our own hands." The words slammed into Rifki like a physical blow. He shook his head violently. "No, Boo, I only went to Surabaya. It's only been 7 days. Look at me. I'm right here." Her cry rose into a wail. "Lies! Don't torment me! Go away!" A neighbor, alarmed by her screams, appeared at the fence. "What's happening?" The old woman sobbed, pointing a trembling finger at Rifki. He says he's my son, but my son is dead." Rifki's throat closed. He raised a hand, wanting to reach for her, to hold her, to make her see, but his body felt paralyzed, stuck between stepping forward and stepping back. The door slammed shut. He stood there, in the night, staring at the barrier between him and the person he loved most. The faint porch light flickered, casting his shadow across the dirt. There were no arms to welcome him, no voice to call him home, only silence and the suffocating cold of a world that refused to believe he was still alive.
Rifki stood in front of the closed door, his chest heaving. The night pressed close around him, heavy with the sound of cicadas and the distant bark of dogs. He raised his hand to knock again, but froze, realizing the futility. His own mother had rejected him. The pain in her voice still echoed in his skull. "My son is dead." Shadows flickered along the dirt road as a group of villagers passed by, carrying jugs of water and bunches of flowers. Their voices were hushed, their movements solemn. Rifki recognized the rhythm instantly. He had walked this same path as a child, carrying candles to the graveyard on nights of remembrance. His pulse quickened. A single word formed in his mind: graveyard. Drawn by something between fear and desperation, he followed at a distance. His footsteps were soundless on the dirt, though he swore the villagers still sensed him, their shoulders stiffening, their whispers thickening. The path wound past banana groves and a stand of ancient bamboo. Mist rolled low across the earth, swirling around ankles and blurring the edges of the night. Ahead, lanterns flickered as the group reached the cemetery gates, simple wooden arches that marked the entrance to the village's resting ground. Rifki stopped at the threshold. Memories surged. His father's burial, Friday night vigils, childhood dares where he and his friends tested their courage among the stones. Back then, death had felt distant. Now it pressed against his skin like ice. Inside, villagers lit oil lamps and spread mats, voices lifting in prayer. The words were low and rhythmic, pulling at the air like tides. Rifki hesitated, then stepped through the gates. Rows of headstones stretched before him, some cracked with age, others freshly painted white. He walked slowly, his eyes scanning each one, unease building with every step. And then he saw it. Near the left corner, a grave stood with flowers still fresh, their petals dewy in the lantern light. A wooden marker bore his own name in neat black paint: Rifki Maulana, born August 8th, 1994, died June 2nd, 2016. His knees buckled. He sank to the earth, staring at the name carved into the wood. His fingers hovered above the soil, trembling violently before finally pressing down. The dirt was cool, damp, disturbingly real. A sharp breath tore from his lungs. No, this isn't right. I didn't die. I was at a hotel. I was working. I came home.
But the ground beneath his hands said otherwise. The grave was tended, cared for. It was not an abandoned marker of mistaken identity. It was his. Behind him, voices broke the rhythm of prayer. "There, look," one man whispered, his tone trembling. A finger pointed toward him. Faces turned, gasps rippled through the gathering. "It's him. He's standing at his own grave. God protect us." His spirit came back. Fear spread like fire. Mothers pulled children close. Men took steps back. Even the lamps seemed to flicker and dim, as if unwilling to shine on him. Rifki staggered to his feet, raising his hands. "Please no, I'm not a ghost. I'm alive. I'm alive." But the words sounded hollow, like breath lost in a storm. Nobody dared step closer. The prayers turned to frantic murmurs, then to silence. Only the rustle of bamboo and the rasp of his own breathing filled the night. And then, one by one, the lamps guttered out. Darkness crept in around him, smothering, absolute. His chest tightened, panic clawed at his ribs. He stumbled backward through the rows of graves, his eyes darting wildly. The villagers had retreated to the far edge of the cemetery, leaving him stranded in the center, alone with the stone that bore his name. Unable to bear their stares, he turned and fled, pushing past the cemetery gates. His lungs burned, his legs numb, yet he didn't stop until the glow of the mosque appeared ahead, its white dome gleaming against the black sky. The call to prayer rang out, steady and strong, summoning the faithful. Relief surged through him. A mosque was sacred ground. If he prayed among them, they would see he was no ghost. He rushed to the ablution area, washing his hands and face with icy water. The sensations steadied him, cold but real. He entered quietly, slipping into the back row as worshippers lined up shoulder to shoulder. For a brief moment, he felt safe. The familiar cadence of worship, the rustle of robes, the murmur of prayer. It was grounding, human, alive. But then, a man in the front row turned, his eyes narrowing, his gaze locked on him. Whispers spread like ripples in water. Heads turned, faces pale.
A large man stepped out of line and strode toward him. His voice was low, sharp as a blade. "Who are you?" Rifki swallowed hard. I just want to pray." The man's hand shot out, gripping his arm. His touch was like fire, searing through Rifki's cold skin. "You don't belong here. You're not among the living." Gasps erupted. Another man moved quickly, slamming the mosque doors shut. Rifki found himself shoved outside into the night air, the heavy wooden doors closing behind him with a final echoing thud. He stood there trembling, the glow of the mosque lamps casting a harsh light on his figure. Inside, the prayers continued, steady, unbroken, while he was locked out. For the first time, he felt the truth settle into his bones. The living had no place for him. The words clung to Rifki's skin like frost. He stood outside the locked mosque doors, the muffled hum of prayer seeping through the wood, every syllable excluding him. The night air was heavy, thick with the scent of damp soil and burning oil lamps. He walked aimlessly, each step dragging like lead. Where else could he go? The village he'd once called home was now a place of whispers and fear. Yet somewhere in the fog of memory, one name glowed faintly like a beacon. Demas. His childhood friend. The boy who once raced him along paddy field paths, who traded comic books with him under the shade of mango trees, who swore they would both leave this village someday to chase bigger dreams. If anyone would believe him, surely it would be Demas. He followed the narrow lane toward the sugarcane fields on the edge of the village. The stalks swayed in the night breeze, rustling like voices murmuring secrets. Half hidden behind them stood Demas's family house, a modest structure with faded paint and a roof patched with tin sheets. A weak light glowed through the curtains. With trembling hands, Rifki knocked. Tock. Tock. The door opened a crack. A middle-aged woman peered out, her eyes sharp, suspicious. It took a moment before recognition softened her features, then hardened them again with something closer to dread. "Boo? Are you Demas's mother?" Rifki asked softly. "It's me, Rifki. I need to see him." The woman's lips parted slightly, but no warmth came. Her eyes darted over his face as though confirming a nightmare. Slowly, she pulled the door wider. "Rifki?" she said, voice hushed, wary. "You shouldn't be here." He stepped forward eagerly. "Please, Boo, just for a moment. I need to talk to him. He's my brother." Her expression twisted. Pain, fear, anger, all mixed into one. "Brother? Do you know what happened to him after your funeral?" The words froze Rifki in place. She continued, her voice trembling but steady enough to cut. "He hasn't been the same. He screams at night, dreams of graves, of your body being lowered into the ground. Sometimes he wakes up shouting your name. Sometimes he talks to empty corners of the room. He even had to be taken to the hospital once, locked away for 2 months, all because he helped carry your body." Rifki's jaw slackened. No, I was never buried. I'm standing here, Boo. I was in Surabaya, just working. Stop!" She snapped, her voice sharp enough to pierce the night. "Don't you dare. Don't twist my son's suffering with your lies." Tears welled in her eyes. "Leave us alone. He's finally sleeping tonight. Don't you dare disturb him again." The door began to close. Rifki reached out, desperate. "Please, just let me see him. He'll know it's me." But the woman's eyes blazed. "Go. Don't curse us again." The door shut with a hollow thud, leaving Rifki staring at the cracked wood. His chest caved inward, emptiness swallowing him whole. He lingered a moment longer, hoping for the door to reopen, for Demas's familiar voice to call out, but silence pressed in, thicker than the mist curling at his feet. Finally, he turned away. The village street stretched before him, eerily quiet.
Once every corner of this place held memories. Laughter at the Waroon, whispered confessions under the bamboo grove, the smell of roasted corn by the roadside. Now each memory felt stolen, rewritten into something grotesque. He drifted through the lanes, past shuttered windows and doors that refused him. It felt as though the entire village breathed in unison, waiting for him to vanish. At last his steps carried him toward another house, one that pulled at him with an ache he couldn't ignore. A house with a blue wooden gate, slightly crooked, where he once spent endless nights whispering promises beneath a window. Rose's house. His fiancée. Or rather, the woman who had once promised to be. The gate creaked softly as he pushed it open. He approached the porch, his heart pounding louder with every step. Through the open window, he glimpsed a warm glow, shadows of movement inside. The door swung open, and Rosa appeared, carrying a bucket of laundry. Her hair was covered by a light scarf, her face older but still achingly familiar. For a split second, her expression was neutral. Then the bucket slipped from her hands, crashing to the ground, water splashing across her bare feet. Her lips trembled. "Rifki!" His breath caught in his throat. He wanted to smile, but his face refused to move. "Rosa, it's me." Her body swayed as if she might faint. Behind her, a tall figure stepped into view, her husband. He placed a protective arm around her shoulders, his eyes narrowing on Rifki like a hawk. Rose's voice broke into a whisper. "I dreamed of you last week. You were standing by the old bamboo grove near the well, watching this house. Your eyes, you looked like you wanted to say something, but no words came. I thought it was just a dream, but now..." Her husband tightened his grip, stepping forward. "If you came here to finish what you started in her dreams, don't. She's moved on. We both have. You have no place here."
Rifki's chest ached. He lowered his head. I just wanted to see her once more, to explain." "There's nothing to explain," the man cut him off. "Leave her in peace." For a moment, silence held the air taut. Rosa's eyes glistened with unshed tears, but she said nothing more. Rifki finally stepped back, whispering, "I'm sorry." Then he turned, leaving the house behind, his figure swallowed by the night. The streets grew colder as he walked. The lamps seemed dimmer, the shadows thicker. Every familiar corner now felt like a wound. For the first time, a horrifying thought began to crystallize in his mind, not whispered by others, not forced upon him, but born from within. Maybe they're right. Maybe I don't belong here anymore. The thought weighed on Rifki as he drifted through the village's empty lanes. His shadow stretched long under the weak glow of street lamps, yet even his shadow felt faint, as though it barely clung to the earth. Where else could he go? The mosque had locked him out. His best friend's family had turned him away. Even Rosa, the woman who once swore to spend her life with him, looked at him like a nightmare returned. There was only one place left: his mother's house, the rental where she had moved after leaving their old home behind. Rifki's steps carried him almost unconsciously back towards the outskirts, where the houses grew sparse and the air smelled of wet grass and bamboo. A single lamp glowed in the distance, a faint yellow dot that grew larger as he approached.
It was the house. The wooden door stood slightly ajar, the curtain in the window swaying with each passing breeze. He hesitated on the porch, listening. Inside, the silence was heavy, broken only by the faint creak of wood. He pushed the door open gently. "Boo?" His voice cracked. The interior was dim, lit by a single weak bulb. In the center of the room, on a bamboo bed covered with thin blankets, lay his mother. Her breathing was shallow, her face pale and slick with sweat. Her hands trembled even in rest. Beside her sat Bujarni, an older neighbor, massaging the woman's feet with herbal oil. She didn't look up when Rifki entered. "Where have you been, Rif?" she asked coldly, as though she had been expecting him all along. Rifki swallowed hard. I just wanted to see Mbah Kromo. I just wanted answers." At that, Bujarni's hands froze. Slowly, she lifted her head, her eyes narrowing at him. "Your mother has been worse since you came back. She calls your name when she's unconscious, her voice not her own. Sometimes her eyes roll back, and it's like something else is speaking through her." Rifki's gaze darted to his mother. He stepped closer, reaching out. "No, I only wanted to be with her, to help her." Bujarni yanked the blanket up over Bumarni's frail body, blocking his touch. "Don't let her rest." Before Rifki could protest, the sound of footsteps approached outside. Voices rose, low but urgent. The front gate creaked. Then several men appeared at the doorway, among them the village headman, Paklura, and the local preacher, Ustad Khadi. Both men's faces were set in grim lines. Rifki instinctively stepped back, his heart hammering. Paklura didn't waste time. "We need to talk." Rifki nodded weakly. "Then talk." The headman's voice was tight, controlled. "This village has been unrestless ever since you returned. People hear crying at night behind their homes. Chickens die without cause. Children wake with fevers that don't break. And your mother," he glanced at the bed, "has been possessed more than once this week. All of it began when you showed up." Rifki's mouth dried. "I didn't do any of that. I just came home. I just want to be with her." Ustad Hadi stepped forward, his voice softer but more dangerous in its certainty. "You can't be here, Rifki. We buried you. We prayed over your body. We lowered you into the ground with our own hands. You died 7 years ago." The words hit him like hammer blows. He staggered back, his breath uneven. No, I'm alive. Look at me. I can speak. I can walk. I can touch things." He slapped his own chest, the hollow sound echoing too sharply in the small room. Paklura's expression didn't change. "That's not life. That's a shadow of life, a leftover, and it's tearing this village apart." Rifki's throat tightened. Tears stung his eyes. "Then why do I still feel? Why do I hurt? Why does it ache so much to be rejected by my own mother?" Neither man answered. Silence stretched, heavy, suffocating. Finally, Rifki lowered his gaze. His voice broke. "If I don't belong here anymore, then I'll go." Paklura gave a slow nod, relief hidden behind his sternness. He gestured to the others, and one by one they filed out, leaving the air colder in their wake. Rifki turned back toward the bed. Her mother still lay pale and unmoving, her lips parting slightly as if murmuring in dreams. He wanted to kneel beside her, to whisper apologies, to hold her hand one last time,
but something deep inside him told him the truth. His very presence was what poisoned her. So instead, he stood silently in the doorway. His tears fell, dripping onto the dusty floor. He whispered so softly, even he could barely hear it. "I'll leave, Boo. I promise. Maybe then you'll finally be able to rest." Without waiting for an answer that would never come, Rifki turned and walked back into the night. The village stretched before him, dim and hushed. He wandered to the rice fields where the wind carried the smell of wet soil and crickets chirped in waves. He reached a small bamboo hut at the edge of the paddies, a place where he and his father once sat after long days of work. From there, the whole village was visible. Smoke curling from kitchens, faint lanterns glowing in windows, the outline of the mosque dome glimmering. It looked so normal from a distance, peaceful, alive. But not for him. Never again for him. Rifki hugged his knees, rocking gently, his breath uneven. His chest ached with a hollowness that no air could fill. And in the whisper of the wind through the paddies, he thought he heard a voice, high and small, like that of a child. "Mas?" He jerked his head up. There, standing barefoot among the stalks of rice, was a boy, no older than 10, thin, wearing an oversized shirt, his dark eyes fixed on Rifki without fear. "You're waiting to be picked up, aren't you?" he asked softly. Rifki's blood turned cold. The boy tilted his head. "You're not one of the living anymore, are you?"
The boy's voice was steady, almost casual, as though he were stating the color of the sky. His bare feet pressed into the damp soil between rows of rice, the hem of his shirt fluttering in the night breeze. Rifki's mouth went dry. "Who are you?" The boy stepped closer, his eyes wide and unblinking. "My name's Ari. I live over there." He pointed toward a cluster of palm trees in the distance, where the faint outline of a house was barely visible through the mist. Rifki blinked, still struggling to process what had just been said. Do you see me? You're not afraid?" Ari shook his head, almost amused. "Why should I be afraid? You look like people I see every day. But the grown-ups, they don't see you the same way." A chill ran down Rifki's spine. He hugged his arms to his chest, staring at this strange child who seemed to understand more than anyone else. "You shouldn't be here," Ari continued, his voice soft but firm. "Your house is gone. Your mother can't look at you without crying. The villagers whisper about you every night. You keep walking around, but you're not walking like us." Rifki swallowed hard. He didn't understand. "I was only gone a week. I went to work, I stayed at a hotel, then I came home. How could it suddenly be 7 years?" The boy tilted his head, studying him with unsettling calm. "Because you left more than this place. You left the world that belongs to the living." The words struck like a blade. Rifki staggered back a step, shaking his head violently. "No, I can touch things. I can breathe. I can feel this cold air in my chest." "Can you?" Ari asked simply. Rifki froze. He pressed a hand to his chest.
The night air swirled around him, yet inside, nothing. No warmth, no steady heartbeat, just emptiness. A hollow cavity that made his stomach churn. His breath caught. He hadn't noticed it before, or maybe he had been too afraid to acknowledge it. The boy continued, "The longer you stay here, the worse it gets. Your mother's health fades, the villagers can't sleep, animals die, shadows follow you. It's because you don't belong." Rifki dropped to his knees in the dirt, his vision blurred with tears. "But I just wanted to come home. I just wanted to see her again, to tell her I'm okay." Ari walked closer, his expression softening. For the first time, he looked like a child, not a messenger of something beyond. He crouched beside Rifki, his small hand hovering but never touching. "She already knows," he said gently. "Mothers always know, but you're hurting her by staying." Rifki's shoulders shook. The words cut deeper than any villager's rejection, deeper than Rose's tears. Because somehow from the lips of this child it felt true. He covered his face with both hands, his voice cracking. "Then what am I supposed to do? Just disappear? Pretend none of this ever happened?" Ari's eyes flicked toward the horizon, where the first hints of dawn began to creep in, paling the mist. Rifki lowered his hands, following the boy's gaze. Beyond the fields stretched the outline of a forest, thick with bamboo and towering mango trees. Deep inside, hidden from most villagers, lived a man everyone whispered about. Mba Kron, the old shaman.
Rifki had heard the stories as a boy, that Mbak Kromo spoke with spirits, that he kept bones in jars, that he knew when a soul was restless. His mother had warned him never to visit unless desperate. Desperate was all Rifki had left. When he turned back, Ari was already walking away, his small figure swallowed by the mist. Rifki called out, "Wait! How do you know all this? Who told you?" The boy glanced over his shoulder. His lips curved into a sad smile. "Sometimes the dead tell me their stories. I just listen." And then he was gone, his silhouette dissolving into the pale light of dawn. Rifki remained kneeling in the dirt long after, his body trembling. The rice fields whispered in the breeze, bending as though bowing to the truth he couldn't escape. Finally, with the rising sun painting the sky in dull gray, Rifki stood. His legs felt heavy, his chest hollow, but his path was clear. He turned away from the village, away from the houses that once felt like home, and began walking toward the shadowed edge of the forest. Every step carried him deeper into silence, the air growing colder, the mist thicker. Birds scattered from the trees as he passed, their cries sharp and startled. Even the insects seemed to hush. By the time he reached the outskirts of the bamboo grove, his breath came ragged. Though not from exhaustion, his body felt too light, too unreal for that. It was the weight of dread that pressed on him. A small hut appeared among the trees, its roof sagging, walls patched with woven bamboo. Smoke curled faintly from a clay incense pot near the door. This was it, the shaman's dwelling. Rifki hesitated at the threshold, his hand hovering over the wooden frame. From inside, a voice rasped, old yet steady. "Come in, Rifki." The name froze him in place. He hadn't spoken, yet the old man already knew. The door creaked as he pushed it open. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of burning incense and dried roots. Shafts of light pierced through holes in the walls, illuminating shelves lined with jars, cloth bundles, and strange charms. On a woven mat in the corner sat Mbakromo, his white hair wild, his face carved deep with wrinkles. His eyes, though clouded with age, gleamed sharp and knowing. "You've been carrying questions since you stepped into this village. It's time you faced the answers." Rifki's knees nearly buckled. He sank down opposite the shaman, his voice trembling. "Please, tell me, what happened to me?" The old shaman didn't answer right away. He sat still, his thin fingers resting on his knees, his eyes half-lidded as though he were listening to something beyond the room. The hut smelled of burnt incense and damp earth. Every shadow seemed alive, flickering with the candle's wavering flame. Finally, Mbakromo spoke. His voice was calm but heavy, each word dropping like a stone into deep water. "You are not the first to return like this, but you are the one who has lingered the longest." Rifki's stomach clenched. "Return? I didn't return from anywhere. I just came home after a week in Surabaya." The old man slowly shook his head. "No, you came back after 7 years in the ground." The air seemed to thicken around Rifki. His ears rang. "That's impossible. I remember everything. I stayed at a hotel. I met with the project manager. I was about to come home. Then I woke up here." Mbakromo reached beside him and pulled out a folded piece of cloth. It was yellowed with age, stained in places. He held it gently, reverently, and then laid it out on the mat between them. "This is part of your burial shroud. Your mother asked me to keep it, to ward off disturbances. But since you returned, it has grown damp, as though soaking in something it cannot hold back." Rifki stared at the cloth, bile rising in his throat. "No, that's not mine." "Touch it," Mbakromo said. His hand shook violently as he reached out. The moment his fingers brushed the fabric, his entire body convulsed. A burning cold shot through his veins. His stomach lurched, and before he could stop himself, he vomited a dark gush of blood onto the mat. He collapsed, gasping, his hands trembling. The taste of iron coated his tongue. Mbakromo didn't flinch. He simply folded the cloth back up and set it aside. "You see now. The body buried in the ground is yours. What walks here is not flesh. It is memory given form, desire too strong to fade. You are what remains when a man refuses to accept death." Rifki's vision blurred with tears. His voice cracked. "But I think, I feel, I can touch things. I'm real." The old man's eyes narrowed. "You think, yes. You feel, echoes. But your presence drains the living.
That is why your mother grows weaker. That is why the villagers suffer. You are a shadow that steals warmth." Rifki clutched his head, rocking back and forth. "No, no, I just wanted to come home. I didn't ask for this." "None of them do," Bakromo said softly. "But the world of the living does not welcome shadows. You cannot walk among them without leaving frost in your wake." The words sank deep into Rifki's bones. He remembered the way lights flickered when he passed, how chickens dropped dead, and how even Rosa dreamed of him standing silently by her house. The shaman leaned closer. "There is a choice before you. You can cling to this half-life, wandering, rejected, bringing only fear. Or," he paused, letting the silence stretch, "or you can release yourself. Accept that your time ended 7 years ago. Free the ones you love from your shadow." Rifki's chest heaved. The thought of vanishing, of no longer existing in any form, terrified him more than any grave. Yet the thought of his mother suffering because of him was worse. He whispered, barely audible, "If I go, will she be okay?" "She will heal," Bakromo said. "The house will grow warm again. Her dreams will quiet. She will remember you not as a ghost that haunts her nights, but as a son she once loved."
Rifki stared at his trembling hands. They already looked paler, almost translucent under the candlelight. The more he noticed, the more unreal they felt. His tears fell hot onto the mat. "I don't want to hurt her anymore, but I don't know how to let go." The shaman closed his eyes, chanting softly under his breath. The words were old, rolling in a rhythm that felt older than the village itself. The flame of the candle bent sideways, as though pushed by unseen wind. When he opened his eyes again, they gleamed sharp and unwavering. "You will know when it is time," he said. "The living will show you, and when they do, you must not resist." Rifki swallowed, his throat raw. "I don't want to hurt her anymore, but I don't know how to let go." The shaman closed his eyes again, chanting softly under his breath. The words were old, rolling in a rhythm that felt older than the village itself. The flame of the candle bent sideways, as though pushed by unseen wind. When he opened his eyes again, they gleamed sharp and unwavering. "You will know when it is time," he said. "The living will show you, and when they do, you must not resist." Rifki swallowed, his throat raw. "I don't want to hurt her anymore, but I don't know how to let go." Silence pressed down on the room. Rifki could hear his own breath rasping, faint and hollow, like wind through reeds. Finally he stood, unsteady but resolved. He bowed slightly to the old man. "Thank you, Ba, for telling me the truth, even if I can't bear it." The shaman nodded once, then closed his eyes again, slipping back into meditation as if Rifki were already gone. Outside, the forest was hushed, the mist clinging to his skin like cobwebs. Rifki stepped on to the narrow path leading back toward the village. The dawn light filtered through the trees, soft and pale, but it brought no warmth to his bones. His body felt lighter than ever, as though he were barely tethered to the earth. And in his mind, Bakromo's words echoed relentlessly.
a shadow that steals warmth. You cannot walk among them without leaving frost in your wake. For the first time, Rifki wondered if disappearing might be the only way to truly come home.
The path back to the village felt longer than before, as if the earth itself resisted his steps. Mist hung low, wrapping the fields in gray silence. By the time he reached the cluster of houses again, the sun had risen, but its warmth never touched his skin. His mother's house stood with the door ajar. A faint groan drifted out, thin and pitiful. Panic surged through him. He rushed inside. The sight froze him. His mother lay sprawled on the bamboo bed, her skin chalky, sweat pouring down her temples. Her chest rose in shallow, ragged breaths, lips whispering something inaudible. Her eyes fluttered as if she were half trapped between waking and nightmare. Beside her sat Bu Jarmi, fanning her with a palm leaf. She didn't look surprised to see Rifki. She didn't even flinch. Instead, her expression was grim, almost accusing. "She's getting weaker," Bu Jarmi muttered, "and every time she calls your name, her voice doesn't sound like her own anymore. Something else speaks through her." Rifki stepped forward, heart splitting. "No, it's me she's calling. She knows I'm here." Bu Jarmi shot him a glare. "And that's what's killing her." Rifki froze mid-step. His chest tightened as he looked at his mother, her hand twitching weakly on the blanket. He wanted to touch her, to wipe her sweat, to whisper comfort. But the fear in Bu Jarmi's eyes told him the truth. His presence was a poison. Before he could say more, voices rose outside. A crowd was gathering, feet shuffling, whispers sharp. The gate creaked. Moments later, the doorway filled with men. Baklura stood at the front, his jaw tight. Beside him was Ustad Hadi, clutching prayer beads. Behind them, villagers crowded the yard, their faces pale but determined. Rifki's stomach dropped. He knew why they had come. Paklura's voice was steady, though strained. "We need to end this." Rifki stepped back instinctively. "Please, I don't mean harm. I only want to stay with her." Paklura shook his head. "The whole village has felt it. Shadows at night, chickens dead by morning, children sick without cause. Your mother screaming with voices not her own anymore. This all began when you returned." Rifki's hands trembled. "I'm not a spirit. I'm alive. I remember everything." Ustad Hadi stepped forward, his voice cutting through like a blade. "No, you were buried. We prayed over you. We carried you to your grave. Dozens of us witnessed it. And now you walk again, hollow and cold." The words pounded in his skull. His voice cracked. "Then why do I still feel pain? Why do I still cry? Why do I ache to hold my mother again?" Silence fell. The villagers exchanged uneasy glances, but none softened. Paklura's gaze stayed locked on him. "Pain doesn't make you alive. Shadows can ache too, but shadows don't belong in the daylight." The words stung worse than knives. His chest felt hollow, his legs weak. He wanted to fight, to argue, but deep inside, the truth gnawed. He lowered his eyes. His voice was barely a whisper. "Then, what do you want me to do?" Paklura's expression didn't change. "Leave. Tonight. Before the sun sets again. If you stay, the village will not survive You." The villagers murmured in agreement. Fear and anger radiated off them like heat. Rifki's throat burned. He turned toward his mother. She was still unconscious, lips moving as if mumbling prayers in her fevered dream. His heart twisted until it felt like it would shatter. He whispered, more to himself than anyone, "I'll go, if that's what it takes for her to be free." Paklura gave a small nod. He and the villagers slowly backed out, though their eyes stayed locked on Rifki until the last moment, as if expecting him to attack. The crowd dispersed into the street, muttering prayers under their breath. The room grew silent again. Rifki knelt by the bed, watching his mother's shallow breaths. He wanted so badly to touch her hand, but fear rooted him. If Bakroma was right, every second he lingered drained her further. Tears spilled down his cheeks. "I'm sorry, Boo. I just wanted to come home. I just wanted to make you proud." The only reply was the wheeze of her breath and the creak of the bamboo frame beneath her fragile body. Slowly, Rifki stood. He pulled on his jacket, its weight strangely meaningless against his fading frame. He stepped out of the house, the sun already dipping toward the horizon, painting the sky in bruised shades of orange. The fields stretched out before him. He walked, not knowing where to go, only knowing he couldn't stay. By the time he reached the bamboo hut at the edge of the rice fields, the village was a distant silhouette behind him. He collapsed onto the wooden bench, staring at the dusky sky. Memories swirled. His mother's laughter, late-night talks with Demas, the warmth of Rose's hand in his own. All of it was slipping through his fingers, becoming echoes. His tears fell freely. If I'm not alive, then why does it hurt this much to say goodbye? The night settled heavy. The wind rose, carrying with it the faint sound of children laughing in the distance. It twisted, warped until it sounded more like weeping. Rifki wrapped himself around himself, rocking gently, his eyes fixed on the horizon where the sun finally disappeared. Behind him, in the thickening dark, the village prepared for evening prayers. But for Rifki, there would be no prayer, no welcome, no home. Only the slow march toward an ending he could no longer avoid.
The night was silent, except for the rasp of Rifki's own breathing. He sat in the bamboo hut at the edge of the fields, staring at the horizon long after the sun had slipped away. The air was heavy, pressing on his skin like damp cloth. The crickets had fallen quiet, as though even the smallest creatures of the night feared what walked among them. He couldn't stay here, not in the fields, not in the house, not in the village that recoiled at his shadow. And so, almost against his will, his feet began to move. The path unrolled before him, narrow and crooked, leading not back to the houses, but deeper into the darkness at the village's edge. Each step felt guided, as though unseen hands pulled him forward. The mist thickened, swirling around his legs until the world seemed little more than gray and shadow. When he lifted his gaze, the wooden arch of the cemetery loomed ahead. His chest tightened. The graveyard lay silent, the headstones pale under the thin light of the moon. Lanterns that the villagers had left earlier now burned faintly, their flames guttering, threatening to vanish at the slightest breeze. The air smelled of damp soil and wilted flowers. He crossed the threshold. His steps carried him unerringly to the left corner, to the grave he had already seen once before. The flowers had wilted further,
their petals curling black. The soil looked darker than the rest, as though it had soaked up more than rain. And there, on the wooden marker, his name stared back at him. Rifki Maulana, died June 2nd, 2016.
He sank to his knees, the earth cool against his skin. His hands trembled as they pressed into the dirt, fingers clawing as though to prove it was real. "I don't want this," he whispered. His voice cracked, carried off by the wind. "I never asked for this. I just wanted to come home." But the ground offered no answer. The silence grew heavier, and then he felt it. A pull. It began subtly, like the tug of an undertow in shallow water, but with each passing second, it grew stronger. His chest hollowed, his limbs turned to lead. His breath came ragged, as though the air no longer belonged to him. His body lurched forward, his palms sinking into the earth. "No!" he gasped, fighting, clawing at the dirt as if he could hold himself up by sheer will. His nails dug furrows, soil filling his hands. His body shook with the effort. "Not yet! Not like this!" But the ground deepened. His arms weakened, his vision blurred. The graves around him seemed to lean closer, their stones bending like silent witnesses. Shadows thickened between them, moving like figures at the edge of sight. A voice whispered in the mist. "It's time." Rifki whipped his head around. The shadows shifted, forming vague shapes, men, women, children, all pale, their faces blurred as though half erased. They stood between the stones, silent, watching. His breath caught. He recognized some of them. Neighbors who had died years ago, familiar outlines from his childhood. And behind them, smaller still, the silhouette of a boy, Ari. The child's eyes glowed faintly in the dark. He didn't smile this time. His voice was steady, certain. "You can't fight it forever. You don't belong here anymore." Tears streamed down Rifki's face. His chest burned with grief that had no release. "But my mother! I can't leave her!" Ari stepped forward, his form flickering like mist. "You already left her once. She mourned you. She survived you. And she'll survive this too. But not if you stay. Not if you keep pulling her with you." Rifki's sob tore through the silence. His arms buckled, his body pressing closer to the grave. The pull was relentless now, a tide dragging him toward the grave. His hands slipped through the soil as though it were no longer solid. He thrashed once more, forcing his head up. "If I go, will she forgive me?" The boy's eyes softened. "She already has." The words broke something inside Rifki. His fight drained away. His body sagged, the soil rising around him like water. His tears fell onto the earth, vanishing instantly into the dirt. The whispers of the shadows grew louder, chanting low, mournful tones that shook the ground. The pull became irresistible. Slowly, inch by inch, Rifki's body sunk into the grave that bore his name. The earth welcomed him like an old friend, cool and unyielding. His hands disappeared, his chest followed, his vision filling with black. The last thing he saw was the boy's silhouette standing calm among the shadows. The last thing he heard was his mother's voice, soft, trembling but filled with love. "Go in peace, Nock. Rest." And then, darkness. The graveyard was silent. The mist thinned with the rising sun, drifting off like smoke after a fire. The villagers, who had tossed and turned in their sleep that night, awoke to something different, a stillness that was not heavy but clean. The air felt lighter. birds returned to their dawn chorus. At Bumarni's small rental house, the change was immediate. Her eyes opened. For the first time in days, her breathing came steady, unlabored. She blinked at the ceiling, the shadows no longer pressing against her. Bujarmi, who had been dozing in a chair beside the bed, startled awake and let out a sharp gasp. "You're awake, Mbak," she whispered. Relief softened her features as she touched Marnie's hand. "How do you feel?" Marnie sat up slowly, her body weak but no longer trembling. A faint warmth had returned to her cheeks. She glanced toward the door as if expecting to see someone standing there. "Rifki," she murmured. The name was not a cry of pain this time, but a sigh of acceptance. A tear slipped down her face, but her lips carried a small, bittersweet smile. "I saw him. He came. And now he's gone. Truly gone." Bujarmi lowered her head, pressing her hands together in prayer. She didn't question it. She had felt the shift too, in her bones, in the way the room no longer buzzed with cold dread. News spread quickly through the village. By mid-morning, people gathered at the cemetery. Some swore they had heard voices in the night, low and mournful, like a vigil carried by the wind. Others said they saw faint lights drifting between the graves, but all agreed on one thing. The grave of Rifki Mulana looked freshly settled, as though it had just accepted its occupant once more. Paklura stood at the edge of the burial ground, arms folded tight. "It's over," he said quietly to Ustad Hadi. The preacher nodded, his beads clicking softly in his fingers. "Pray it rests this time." Life began to return to normal. Chickens stopped dying. Children's fevers broke. The nightly whispers vanished. The villagers stopped locking their doors in terror. But none of them spoke openly about Rifki. When his name came up, it was quickly hushed, as if saying it out loud might invite him back. Except for one person. Every evening, Bumarni shuffled slowly to the edge of the rice fields. She sat on the old bamboo hut bench where her husband once rested, staring toward the horizon. Sometimes she smiled, sometimes she wept, but always she whispered the same words. "Rest well, Nak. Mother is proud of you." And though no one else ever saw him again, she swore she felt a breeze brush her cheek whenever she said it. Warm, not cold, as though her son had finally found peace.
Some stories end with clarity, others with questions. Rifki's story ends with both. The villagers believed he was a shadow, a soul that refused to leave. His mother believed he was her son, coming back one last time to say goodbye. And Rifki himself, well, perhaps he was both. A memory too strong to fade, a love too heavy to let go. But in the end, even shadows must return to the darkness. And maybe, just maybe, the scariest part isn't that Rifki came back. It's that he walked among the living for 7 long days before anyone dared to tell him he was dead. So, what do you think? If someone you loved, someone you buried with your own hands, knocked on your door tonight, would you welcome them in? Or would you shut the door, praying they'd never return? The choice would be yours.